Welcome to Koii Dev Webinar number 11. We're going to get you from 0 to hero on building a Koii task. And that's all thanks to our brand new task template. A lot of these updates came out 2 days ago. We did a lot of work to make things a lot easier, a lot simpler. And I'm really excited to kind of show you guys all the work that we've put into to get here. So, yeah. Before we get started into the task template, just a little bit about Koii, if in case you don't know, is we are a decentralized social compute network. We're trying to build the next big cloud computer. Everybody's always asking, what's the world's biggest supercomputer? I mean, well, the answer is it's the one that's in all of our hands. It's just not hooked up yet. And once it is, we'll have a brand new internet on our hands, and that's where Koii kind of wants to take things. So yeah, I'm really, really glad to introduce you guys to our new template. So how would you get to that new template? Well, there's a few different ways. If you're brand new to Koii, then I suggest going to our easy sandbox. And if you go through lessons 1, 2, and 3, you'll eventually get to our task template that way. Another way is to go to our docs and just type in task template. Task template. Oh, did we get rid of it from our docs? Huh, that's interesting. Oh, no, it's right here. Okay. 0 to hero with tasks. Okay, I knew it was here. I was like, I'm almost positive the task template is somewhere in here. So, sorry, if you search up task template, you might have to scroll down a little, and you'll find developers, task template, 0 to hero with Koii tasks. That's exactly what we want to click. And right here, you'll have the task template, and that'll take you right to the spot you want to go. So I will drop that in chat for anybody here, but for anybody who doesn't know how to get there, that's probably the most straightforward way. Of course, you could probably also type in Koii task template, and it might be the first one that pops up. Cool. So now that oops, sorry, I'm just gonna mute someone. It's all good. Now that you have your the task template in front of you, we just want to click this green button, and we want to. There's gonna be something that says clone using the web URL, and then this little copy button. We're just gonna click that copy button, and now we're gonna move over to VS Code. And for the rest of our time here today, we're probably gonna be staying in VS Code. So if we hit Control Shift and the tilde or grave key, that'll open up the console. Another way you can open up the console, is it the terminal? It's the terminal. You can just click a new terminal up here, and that'll open up a terminal too. Mine defaults to PowerShell. If you're using the CMD, that's also good too if you're on Windows. If you're using a different OS, for the most part, the commands will be largely the same. So the first thing we want to do is clone. So we're going to type in git clone, and then we're going to hit Control V, which is going to paste that link we just copied from the GitHub website. And press enter, and that's just going to clone our entire task template. Now, you might notice that made a folder with the task template. So to get into that, from our terminal, we want to CD, and then hit T, and then the tab key. And that'll automatically populate the task template. Then we can press enter. Cool. If anybody in chat, falls behind, just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to repeat anything I said. But yeah, otherwise, we will start looking at some files. So the first thing that we want to do when we come into our task template is we want to turn our .env file into something useful. So we're going to go to our .env file. You're going to click on it. You can right click and hit rename, or you can hit the F2 key. And we're going to get rid of the .developer .example. We're just going to backspace. If you have an extension that gives you icons, the fancy little icons, you might notice that change. If anybody's curious what that icon one is called, show running extensions. VS Code icons. It's definitely this one. So if you just go to the extension marketplace and you type in VS Code icons, you can get all those fun icons that'll populate. Oh. Yeah, look at that. You'll get all those fun little icons, and it makes in my opinion, makes development a lot easier. So now you'll have this .n file, and this will be mostly for testing. So when we're testing our task, we want to make sure that we fill this in with all the relevant information, and I'll make sure we go over that before the end of our time here today. The other thing we want to take note of is the config.task.yml. So we can start putting in some information here right now. So this is webinar number 11 task, 0 to hero. That's what we're going to call it. The author is Avi from Koii. The description is a neat little task we made during the webinar. Repository, we'll have to sort of create a repository first, but we can get to that in a bit. Image URL. What I tend to do here is I create a new folder and we call it assets. And again, if you have the icons, that asset folder, get a nice icon. And so what I typically put in here then is the asset that I want to use for my image URL. Then when we make a GitHub repo and we push to a public GitHub repo, that asset will be available for us to just kind of punch in. Info URL, we're going to make that Koii Oceans page. So I'm just going to grab that link. We're going to go to Koii Network. I think it's /ocean. Yep. Info URL. And we'll just paste that URL right there. And we're going to make sure that we're adding in the HTTPS. And all the extra little throws. Just gonna mute someone. It's all good. Next thing we want to probably look at is we're going to be using a KPL token, but we need to get our minting address. In our last episode, or in a few of our last episodes, we looked over minting, and so we made our KWebin token. So I can quickly show you. I'm not going to show you how to make a token, but I can show you how to find a token. So I will move to this screen back again, just to share. Oh, sorry, this screen. See if it moves over. Nice. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Explorer. So we're going to go to explorer.koii.live. And if you've already made your token, but you don't know your token address, just type it into the search bar up here, and you'll be able to find it pretty easy. And you can copy your address just like that. Great. And we'll paste that right there. And now we're using the appropriate token. So we can say KWebin webinar token being used. Cool. We're going to keep our space at 0.1 for testing purposes. This is just something I want to note because I've noticed that some users in the community sometimes they forget to do this bit. When you're making your production task, you want to set your space to something high. But when you're testing your task again, make sure to set your space back to 0.1 and deploy a new task for testing. The reason we do this is because the gas fees for space at 0.1 is 16 Koii. The gas fee if your space fee is 1 is like 100 to 300 Koii. So make sure that when we're testing, we're not doing production updates. So we're making the space small for testing and testing deployments. If you're paying a bunch of gas fees to deploy your testing task, you're like that's not the intention here. In fact, you should be able to use prod debug to test your task without any gas fee at all, or at the very least, very minimal gas fee. Okay. We will probably go over the full testing suite next webinar session, but I'll go over a little bit today. The other thing is that just so that you're a bit more conscious of it, make sure that we're switching your environment from test to production or back and forth. This is a really, really important flag that will basically show or hide your task from other people. If it's in testing mode, it'll be hidden. So we want to make sure we're doing that. We are slowly starting to support more and more tags. So if you want to add your own tags, you can. We unfortunately don't have a webinar tag, but I can put it there just as an example. But you can control click that link and they'll actually take you to the actual tags page, and it says we only currently offer the AI and the ML tag, but it will be updated pretty soon. So I'm pretty sure right now this will do nothing, but that's okay. And then if we're going to update our task, there's the task ID here and the migration description, which is migration description means like what's your task update, and then the task ID, what task are we updating? Cool. So that's the basics of like, those are the only two files, .env and config.task or -task.yml are the only two real files you'll probably be messing around with. You might notice, however, that your git ignore is here, your package.json's here, nodemon.json's here, webpack.config, docker compose. If you know what these kind of things are, then they'll make sense to you. They're mostly just configs and stuff like that. If you don't know what they are, don't worry about it, and don't feel like you need to be overwhelmed by them. Just focus on the .env and the config.task. Before we continue any further, we're going to want to npm or yarn install. I think we're going to do yarn, just because that's the more modern way of going about it. So we're just going to type in yarn install. Awesome. You might notice it says saved lock file and it made this yarn.lock. If we actually click that, this is all the modules that yarn installed for us. The reason we do this is because this node modules folder that got built, when we did yarn install, we built this node module folder and we installed all of these folders. Uploading all of these folders to GitHub can be very cumbersome and can quickly remove, all of your space, all of your access. So instead, what we do is we make these yarn lock or package.json files, which basically contain in text form all the things and versions that you actually need to install, and of course, all of the dependencies. So when we go into our git ignore, we'll notice that package lock.json and node modules are excluded. They're ignored by Git when you push back to Git. Yarn lock is actually also ignored, which is probably, in my opinion, if I were you, I would get rid of it. We want our package.json and our yarn.lock to come through, in my opinion. Some people would disagree with that. And if you know what you're doing and you don't want your lock out there, like you just want this package.json, and you think that's good enough, then that's all good. Of course, if you npm install, it'll get you all the right stuff anyway. So no worries, however you kind of want to go about it. The choice is yours. We give you a lot of options. If you're unsure what to do, just leave it default. Okay, so what's next? How do I actually start doing stuff? So like we've done all this setup, and that took us about, let's say it took us about like maybe 15 minutes just to go over the setup and do all the setup and stuff. And I think we've hit all the variables here. Oh yeah, we still have to make a GitHub repo, but we'll do that maybe closer to because that's pretty easy. You can Google how to do that. So what's next? There's going to be this source folder. We're going to want to open that source folder. And then we're going to want to open up the task. Now there's basically 5 steps here that are the most important steps, but then there's also one more optional step we can consider. So we're going to start by going to step 0, because that's just makes sense. Let's start at step 0. Step 0 is called setup. And this is where you can set up anything that you want the task or the node to have before the task starts. For example, maybe you want to console.log the date. Maybe you want to console.log that, or maybe you want to hit an API, right? Maybe you want to define a custom API route. Well, how would you do that? You go into routes.js. You would copy this. I just pressed Alt-Shift and the down arrow key. But alternatively, you could press copy, which is Control-C, and Control-V to paste, or you can right-click, copy, and paste. And then you can define your own endpoint. So this one's value, so maybe we'll call this one return hello. We're going to get rid of this one here. And we will say res.status. We'll return some JSON that says, you know, hello. Hello. Now, obviously, this is really silly JSON, makes not much sense at all. But you can see how this is a custom endpoint, and you could probably do whatever you want. As long as, remember, we're doing a response. Optionally, you can give a status code of 200, which means okay. And then you can give your JSON, or you can actually, this is an express endpoint. So you can look up express endpoints. Here, express endpoints. They're really, really easy to build, and you can make a you can do a lot with them. So there's some interesting stuff you can do in setup. For today's exercise, we're not going to do anything in setup. We're going to move right on to task. So this is the task. There's a few things that we want to consider when we're making a task. So the first thing is this try statement. This is, we're actually going to try and do the task stuff. There's a catch statement, what happens if we get into an error. And then there's also functions that we might want to make outside of the actual task itself. Helper functions, for example. So we want to make a function, so we're going to make it an async function, and then we're going to call this, multiplier. Multiply function. Not particularly creative today. So what do we want to do with this? Let's pretend, if you've gone through the easy sandbox, sorry, I'm going to take one step back. You might know that within our config.task.yml, we can add task variables. So let's, I don't know why, Twitter password is an odd one. But let's try, what is your favorite number? Cool. Actually, sorry, this is the description. What is your favorite number? And then we'll go favorite number. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to our task. So we're going to do const favorite number equals process.end favorite number. So what just happened here? What are we doing? Let's explain that. In task, in the config.task.yml, we're asking the node to ask the user to put in their favorite number. Then in our actual task, we are getting that favorite number. It's held in something called process.end. These are your environment variables. That's what they're called. And we called it favorite number, so it's going to be accessible under favorite number. So process.m.favorite number is now held in a constant variable called favorite number. This should be immutable. We don't want this to ever change. It should always be what we grabbed. That's why we're making it a constant. Great. So now we want to do something with it. So let's say this is grab our variable. Well, now we want to do something with the variable. So let's say const new number equals multiply function favorite number. So now we have to, make a little function. So we'll take in a number and we'll say return number times number. We can just, we'll even call this square function. Square the number. Square function. Awesome. Now we don't even have to call this new number. We can call this favorite number squared. Cool. Optionally, you can console.log things. I suggest you console.log everything just to have verbose console logs for testing. So we could say favorite number. Actually, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit the grave key. So we're going to delete all that. We're going to hit the grave key. We're going to say favorite number was $, instead of curly braces, favorite number. Then we'll go outside the curly braces and say, and if we square that, we got $, curly braces, favorite number squared. Cool. Boop. Cool. So now we want to, you could optionally return this value so that it can be used in debugging. But you might notice that this isn't a typical return statement. This is actually a store set. So I actually always do this, just because it's way easier to process sort of what's going on. So this is store data to NEDB. Yes, we say it's optional, but really what's happening is we're storing data to the DB. We're saying it's a return, but it's a store. We're calling a store set, and we're going to say our favorite number squared is our favorite number squared. Cool. So now we've stored this into NEDB. So this is a really basic example of a task. We took in a variable, we did something with that variable, and now we're storing the result of that variable into the namespace wrapper. Now we go to submission. Submission is really, really easy. Basically, we want to get that value and return that value. Or if it's straightforward, we can actually just simply get the value. Sometimes in a submission, you need to do a bit more work, right? To make your submission correct. But perhaps you've already, in our case, we've already done the work, or we really just want to multiply it. There's not much else we need to do to it. So really, we want to get our favorite number squared. And we just want to submit that, nothing else. Return, store, get, favorite number squared. Awesome. So now we need to audit that. So what does auditing mean? Basically, auditing means this function should return true if the submission was correct. What does that mean? It's sometimes hard to. Oh, sorry, thank you. It's sometimes hard to build a string, an audit function, but we can try and give you an example. Just give me one sec. Building an audit can sometimes be a little stressful, a little awkward, but what we're going to do is this. This is how I like to do my audit. Let vote equal false. Okay? And then we're going to return vote. Now, you could, in concept, return your submission. It's entirely up to you how you want to handle this. But I think the easiest way to go about it is a vote. Sometimes a simple voting, like it's not sufficient for what your auditing wants to do. But in our case, really, all I'm curious about is if type of submission equals int, right? Returns a string. Oh, okay, cool. Okay. So in concept, this would work. If this is wrong code, I'm sorry, but you'll be able to debug this live. But let's say if type of submission is a number, then vote equals true. And that's it. Let's return that vote. It's either a number or it's not a number. If it's not a number, then don't vote. If it is a number, then you can vote true. Now, when we come to distribution, we actually don't have to do anything. The distribution can look like a beast, and we're going to try and quickly go over it. I see I have a question in chat, so I will come back to that in just a sec. Distribution does look like a beast, though, so we'll go over it slowly, but ultimately, we shouldn't actually have to do anything now that we set up this nice vote structure. But I do have a question in chat, a few questions, actually, no worries. I presume that TypeScript can be used, am I right? TypeScript can definitely be used, you are correct. We just try and make it JavaScript because it's a bit more commonplace, it's a bit more used, but TypeScript's totally fine. Yeah, we use that. It's actually all based on TypeScript. I mean, the back end of everything that's going on here, when it actually hits our own servers and stuff like that, it all is TypeScript. Can we replace Express with another framework like Fastify? Yes, you can. You just need to, so you can replace the framework within the task, but the node uses Express by default. And that's basically, I mean, let's just say the node always uses Express. We're looking on an option to change that. We want to start supporting Socket.io next, and then yeah, other frameworks will come after that. But right now, it's all Express on the actual node. So you can use other frameworks when you're actually at the task level. You just have to make sure that everything you're doing is Express friendly. I don't know exactly what that looks like with specific frameworks, but I know with Socket.io, that is possible. So kind of depends on how you want to go about it and what features you want to use. But ultimately, everything has to move through an Express server. 3, I was still curious about how much of a Web 2 solution stack can be accommodated. Can a regular tier stack, like a web server, a web app, DB, be readily implemented on Koii? Yeah, Koii has been designed essentially to accommodate Web 2 solutions and stacks. A lot of what we do is actually the MERN stack. So, I mean, we're using a very famous, React Express node based sort of Web 2 stack. And that's been our methodology, or at least our method moving like when developing Koii stuff. So yeah, you can import React, you can import Mongo, you could create a SQL server. We have NEDB, which is kind of like Mongo if it was in RAM. That's built into the node, but you can do anything. You can't use socket.io. That's probably the biggest limitation right now. WebSockets are not supported properly on Koii. But aside from that, it's pretty capable. Web servers, web apps, yeah, for sure. I mean, we have people who host their website on Koii. So if you wanted to, bring in WordPress and actually build out your website, and then you wanted to have your website hosted through Koii, that's also possible. There's a lot of security vetting that we do on our side. We're trying to automate that security vetting. It's called our whitelisting process. Right now, we're really swamped with our whitelisting process. Traditionally, it took about a week per task, and that wasn't a big deal because of the amount of tasks we got. But now we're getting about 4 to 5 tasks every week. So we're trying to figure out a way to automate that and kind of make that work a bit better. So right now, hosting your website on Koii would be a bit slow, but we're trying to create a solution, kind of like Shopify, where you can really spin something up in no time. Web app is clear. What about web server and DB layers? Yeah. So hopefully I kind of explained that. If you have a more specific question, let me know. It looks to me that the DB layer may have to be centralized somewhere for privacy. It depends. If you're using ZK technology, actually, sorry, I should take a step back. There's something in Web3 called zero knowledge technologies. Zero knowledge technologies basically mean if we're on this decentralized server and everything is public, then we need to create a system where we can, have secure and anonymized data. And so how do we do that? Well, firstly, we just kind of go with this premise that we don't trust anybody on the network. And so we do a lot of work to encrypt and wrap our data and our packages, right? So that as it's moving through the system, no one aside from me and the person I want it to go to can actually look at it and access it. So if you want to have a DB layer that is truly anonymous, that is not like right now, if you used any DB or that's just stored openly in RAM, although it's local in the computer, but you can't DB share, which means you would share that DB with all the nodes in the cluster, and you can use IPFS, which is our decentralized file hosting solution, which basically takes your file, turns it into 10 megabyte shards, and then passes it around the decentralized system. If you wanted to create a DB, within that shared system, and you wanted it to be completely privatized, then you would need to use zero knowledge technologies, ZK technologies, and that basically means like one of the big limitations of that, to get technical, is let's say you have a sharding function that breaks your file down into bytes, so you into eights, and then it cuts them down to, let's say, 8 megabytes, because we have a 10 megabyte max, and then we need to encrypt that data, which means we need to convert it probably to a different data type. Not necessarily, but we might. So then there might be some metadata we wrap around it. It's a complex solution, is all I'm saying. There's a wider conversation to be had for sure. Though a centralized solution for DB privacy is totally reasonable as well. So it's not to say that you shouldn't use a centralized solution. You can, and if it makes sense for you or your company, then there's no real issue with it as far as Koii is concerned. As long as you're open and honest with the community about what you're doing, what kind of data you're capturing, then all is fine. Let me know if you have any other questions. If I answered all your questions, if I introduce any more questions, let me know. More than happy to answer. But let's just quickly, before we run out of time here, go through. So we're going to generate a reward list for a given round, and we're going to get the public keys as and reward amounts as values. So, boom, we're going to have a distribution list. Remember, this is the actual list. And then we have the approved submitters. And we want to slash the stakes of submitters who had incorrect values. and make a list of submitters who had the correct values. So what does this look like? We say for submitter of submitters, right? We're making them consts because we don't want them to be mutable. We want them to be immutable. Can't change them. If submitter.votes is 0, distribution list submitter.public key equals 0. Else if the votes is less than 0, then we want to slash it. Else we want to push them. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Sorry, I missed this L. So what does this mean? So we want, in order to make distributions dynamic, we use numbers here, but you can consider less than 0 false, oh no, you can consider 0 a false. I think you get less than 0 might also flag as a false, and then anything else, which is basically a true, gets pushed. So either way, in my case, I'm good with it. If my vote is 0, then you get 0 rewards. You don't necessarily get slashed, but you don't get any rewards. Okay? So a voting system, yes or no, can't necessarily slash people, or it has to indiscriminately slash people. The easiest way to do this is this. Oopsie. Sorry, is this. If it's false, oh wait, actually, there's a better way to do this. This isn't as easy, but this is maybe better. What you want to do is take this second statement. So from the if to the if, get rid of that. And then say if submitter.votes is 0, then we slash them. Basically a false in this case, a bool of false is 0, a bool of true is 1. Then this is really easy. So we just have to get rid of 2 lines of code, and then we can make this work really easy. Where if you don't submit a number, you get slash. If you submitted a number, you get positive. Doesn't really matter what the number is. At least in my case, of course, if you want to make something more complex, you could. Awesome. And then if approved, submitter. Right. So this is just reporting the distribution list itself. And that's it. That's it, guys. That's all the steps. So what we would need to do next is we would want to run, we want to take an npx @ Koii /create task CLI. Did I do that right? Put an E. CLI at latest. Oh, there we go. Sorry, that was a little slow. Usually that's really quick. Something must just be going on with my computer. But here we are. Now all you need to do is deploy a new task. I'm not going to go through this whole process, but all you need to do is basically just press enter. Oh yeah, there's one thing I did forget. So make sure you webpack your task. If you're ever curious about how to webpack, just go to your README file, scroll down, and it'll say npm run webpack. Cool. So we're going to do that. Cool. Now we're going to run npx @ Koii /create task CLI at latest. Deploy a new task, press enter, press yes, and we'll go through a few other things. So I'm going to cancel this because we only have 5 minutes left, and I actually want to show you how to install that Koii CLI, because I'm sure you're thinking, oh, I don't know how to use, if I have that create task CLI on my computer. Totally reasonable. You probably don't if you've never done it before. So let's get it. Let's get you guys to that step. So what would you do? We'd go to Koii Network, and we go to our docs. And from our docs, I have it right here, but you can type in create task CLI. Oh, sorry. That's not actually what I meant to do. install create task CLI. This is what you want to do. You're going to run the command in your terminal. Boom, npx. That's actually going to get you and install it. After you choose some options and prompts from your wallet, you'll basically have it. Don't have a Koii wallet yet, you can click here to generate. And if you get errors with this, it might be because you don't have the base Koii CLI. This is the create task CLI, but you might need the Koii CLI. It's called the Koii command line tool. It's Koii CLI suite. If usually this installs automatically, but sometimes users have permissions that doesn't let this install onto the computer. Especially if you're a developer, you might have those permissions enabled. And so what you want to do is you can come here, there's Windows, Mac OS, but basically you want to just punch in these commands, press enter and enter and enter, and you will eventually get the Koii task CLI. Another question in chat. Thanks. My other question has to do with AI. Can node GPUs be directly targeted for ML training? There's two steps to that question. Yes, they can be directly targeted, but it's a permissions thing. So the Koii desktop node, if I'm sure you're familiar, you've run that node, it's where you run the tasks and stuff like that. That has default application permissions. Default application permissions aren't allowed to access your GPU. And I'm pretty sure Koii desktop node doesn't. So that means you probably won't have the permissions to access a GPU. That being said, you are allowed to make the calls, and like if you want to have TensorFlow JS and stuff like that on a Koii task, people are working and playing around with it. I'm not exactly certain what the solution is, like a concrete solution, but as I imagine it, it's you need to basically have the task request the permission from Windows, and then the user themselves needs to hit OK, and then they kind of give the task permission. Yeah. Usually in the testing suite, it'll work locally on your computer, and then you try and deploy the Koii node on someone else's computer, and your TensorFlow JS stuff won't work. So I'm not. I guess when it specifically comes to targeting GPUs, that's a tougher question. Can you run TensorFlow JS? Absolutely. But can you actually hit those GPUs? That's a different question. We are partnering with companies like Exhibit so that we can get, basically centralized GPU farms to help power the Koii network so that we can do stuff like this. But overall, we're still working on a actual GPU solution, which will hopefully be something that, is as easy as a few clicks in, the Koii thing, or like a few lines that you have to edit in the config.task.yml, and then, you can access GPUs just like that. But unfortunately, that's not quite here yet. We have basically found ourselves right at the tail end of our time here, and I've luckily been able to go over everything that I wanted to go over. The testing stuff will have to wait for next week, but that's all good. More than happy to show you guys all the testing stuff then. In the meantime, if there are any, final questions that are sitting on anyone's mind, I know we've had a lot of people, jump in and jump out. Are you partnering with Kaprinsky? They just acquired Fire. I mean, acquiring Fire tokens is oh, do you mean they're publicly trading Fire? Like on a DEX? Because ours is called OFire. Yeah, we have OFire. So Fire is not our token. Ours is called OFire. Yeah, the O stands for ocean, so it's Koii Ocean's Fire token, and then we have Koii Ocean's bird token. All right, guys, I'm gonna have to jump away here, but this was a great session. Yeah, check in on Discord. I have a lot of Discord messages that are hanging around. So sorry if I'm a little late to get to them. I'll try and get to them within a few days for sure. There's a lot going on Koii right now. I'm sure everybody's heard that we're going to be launching Mainnet very, very soon, December 1st by the latest, but I'm going to guess, depending on like how soon we get listed on exchanges, it might actually come a little sooner. We'll see. But yeah, very exciting news. Just means we're very busy here at Koii. But stay tuned, and there will definitely be some more really exciting updates, especially if you're a developer and you're trying to build something on Koii. Yeah, sweet. Thanks so much, guys. And this will be uploaded to YouTube very soon, just in case you want to review. Okay, see you guys.